liked Christmas a lot, but the Grinch, who lived north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. He didn't know God loved him. That was the reason. He thought that Christians' heads weren't screwed on just right. He thought they were crazy and looked for a fight.
God doesn't love me and God doesn't care. But critical Christians keep their hands in the air. Worshipping Jesus, who doesn't exist, is just an excuse to buy shiny new gifts.
I think that the real reason, the one most of all, was that the Grinch's heart was 2 sizes too small, broken and battered as years had gone by, with him thinking that Jesus was all just a lie. But whatever the reason, the presents or ruse, he stood there on Christmas Eve, hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, Grinchy frown at the warm-lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now, hanging a mistletoe wreath.
And they're sending out presents.
He snared with a sneer.
Tomorrow's Christmas. It's practically here.
Then he growled with Grinchy fingers nervously drumming.
I must find a way to stop Christmas from coming.
For tomorrow he knew all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They'd rush for their toys. And then, oh, the noise. That's one thing he hated. The noise. Then the Whos, young and old, would sit down to feast. And they'd feast and they'd feast and they'd feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beast, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with church bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. They'd sing and they'd sing and they'd sing. And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought,
Must stop this whole thing. Why for 53 years I put up with it now? I must find a way to stop this Christmas from coming, but how?
Then he got an idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful. Awful idea.
I know just what I'll do.
the Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and a coat, and he chuckled and clucked.
What a great Grinchy trick. With his hat and his coat, I look just like St. Nick. All I need is a reindeer.
The Grinch looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there was none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said,
If I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead.
So he called his dog Max. Then he took some red thread and he tied a big horn on the top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max.
Giddy up, Max. Pull on the sleigh down. Then towards the home of the who all snooze in their town.
All their windows were dark. Quiet snow filled the air. All the Whos were all dreaming sweet dreams without care. When he came to the first little house on the square,
This is house number 1. The old Grinch hissed, and he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist.
then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once, for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row.
These stockings, I say, are the first things to go. They say that they're Christian. They say that they try. And why they argue, steal, blasphemy, and lie. They do whatever they want every Saturday night and wake up on Sunday and think they're all right. This season right here is a perfect example. How greedy they are. Just look at the sample.
Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present. Pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorns, and plums. And he stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch, very nimbly, stuffed all the bags, one by one, up the chimbley. Then he slunk to the icebox. He took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beast. He cleaned out that icebox as quick as a flash. Why, the Grinch even took their last can of Who hash.
Stuffed up all the food up the chimney. Yippee! Now it's time to split up the tree.
And the Grinch grabbed the tree, and he started to shove when he heard a small sound like a coo of a dove. He turned around fast and noticed a pair of little Who girls who should not have been there.
What's going on here? They should be snoozing. It's Christmas Eve. This is so confusing. I'll creep a bit closer and see what they're doing.
But the Grinch couldn't believe the sight he was viewing. The two little girls were kneeled by their beds, but visions of sugar plums weren't in their heads. Instead, they were praying.
Praying, oh dear. Just blink my eye, it'll all disappear. Little kids are not thankful, they're full of disgrace. Anywho, well, here, I'll just grab this face.
But he paused as he heard one little girl squeak, and he listened for the voice, quiet and weak.
And one more thing, Jesus. We've already prayed, thanking you for all the great things you have made. And we thank you for dying and being our Savior, and ask that you forgive all of our misbehaviors. But if we may, we have one more request. It's the Grinch, dear Lord. I'm sure you have guessed.
And others, they say, that he doesn't know you, Lord. But some say he used to believe, then grew bored.
Some people say he's no good, that he's a mean mischief maker. He's a villain, a scoundrel, a deadbeat, a taker.
Or maybe he's confused and doesn't understand your grace, your compassion, your mercy so grand. Help his eyes to be opened, his spirit to grow, so that he may have the same love we already know.
The Grinch paused for a moment, then coughed a deep voice.
So this Grinch has a choice?
The girls looked around, but they didn't see anyone. So that mean Grinchy Claus decided to have some fun.
Don't look around. I'm up here. It's me, God. I've been listening to you talk as you pull and you prod. The Grinch's business is his own, as is yours, can't you see? And if you're praying for more presents, you're barking up the wrong tree.
The tiny Who daughters were unsure of what should be said, so they quickly said amen and jumped into bed. The Grinch looked around with a smirk on his face, and he started to make his way out of that place. The last thing he took was a log for their fire, then went up the chimney himself, that old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire, and the one speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. The Grinch strolled past the front lawn of the Good Shepherd Church. Looking for goodies, he began to search.
There's nothing good here outside this old construction.
He scanned the front porch and began his abduction. For the flowers and rugs, I will make space, but not the nativity. Ugh, what a waste. It was 15:15 dawn, all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still a snooze, when he packed up his sled, packed it up tight with their presents, the wrappings, the ribbons, the tags, and the tinsel, the trappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Cruppet, he rode his load to the tip-top to dump it.
Boo-hoo for the Who's.
he was grinchishly humming.
They're just finding out that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths lying open for a minute or two. Then all the who's and who will up and boo. That's a sound that I must hear.
So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear, and he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started out low, then it started to grow. But the sound wasn't sad. Why, the sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry, very. He stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who done in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing, without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same.
Thank you, dear God, for your gifts from above. You sent down your Son full of goodness and love. And through him, you've shown us a better way of living, a way to eventually join you in heaven.
And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling.
How could it be so? Came without ribbons, came without tags, came without packages, boxes, or bags.
And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before.
Maybe this season doesn't come from a store. Maybe this Christmas means a little bit more.
And what happened then? Well, in Whoville, they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. He bowed his head and offered a prayer. The Grinch found salvation right then and right there. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light. And he brought back the toys and the food for the feast, and he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast.
And if anyone wants to know what I found, grab Pastamuni and come on right down to church on the 24th to celebrate together our dear Savior's birth. See you on 7:30.